The rain fell incessantly on Los Angeles, turning the asphalt into a mirror of vibrant lights. Taylor Swift drove through the wet streets of the city, listening to the soft sound of rain mingle with instrumental music playing softly on the radio. It was a quiet night with no commitments or crowds, just her, the steering wheel, and her thoughts. When the fuel tank began to empty, she stopped at the first gas station she found. The neon sign flashed a greenish hue, reflecting in the puddles that littered the floor. She turned off the engine and pulled the hood of her sweatshirt to cover part of her face, keeping a low profile. While waiting for the gas pump to complete the supply, a movement on the sidewalk caught his attention. Under the marquee of the post, a young woman held a small girl by the hand. The woman, visibly exhausted, adjusted a thin coat over her shoulders and pressed a battered bag against her. The cold wind whipped her damp hair, and the little girl next to her trembled, her little eyes attentive to any movement around. Taylor watched for a moment, feeling a tightness in her chest. The scene had something painfully real, an untold story hidden among the raindrops. The coldness of the big city used to ignore moments like that, but Taylor didn't. She grabbed an umbrella from the passenger seat and, without hesitation, walked over to the woman. "Are you okay?" he asked, his soft voice cutting through the silence. The young woman looked up in surprise. His face was marked by fatigue, but there was a trace of pride in his expression. "Yes, we're just waiting for the rain to stop," he replied hesitantly. The girl next to her shook her mother's hand and looked at Taylor curiously. "What's your name?" Taylor asked, bending down to be at the height of the little girl. "Sophia," the girl replied, with a thread of voice. "Beautiful name." "I'm Taylor." The young mother's eyes widened slightly as she recognized the name, but she said nothing. He just pulled Sophia closer, as if protecting her was his absolute priority. Taylor noticed the hesitation and decided not to press. "Have you had dinner yet?" he asked, looking at the little girl, who looked away without answering. The mother sighed. "We're fine, really. Alone. We had a difficult day." That sentence carried much more than it said. Taylor could read between the lines. She then looked at the 24-hour cafe across the street. "Come with me," he said with a gentle smile. "Let's warm up a little." The woman hesitated, but Sophia's hunger spoke louder. Finally, she nodded. Taylor grabbed her purse, paid for the fuel, and holding her umbrella to cover them from the rain, guided mother and daughter to the small restaurant. It would just be a meal for Taylor, but for Emily and Sophia, it might be the beginning of something much bigger. The bell on the door of the small cafe tinkled as Taylor, Emily, and Sophia entered. The smell of freshly brewed coffee and toasted bread filled the warm room, a cozy contrast to the cold rain outside. The yellowish lights cast a soft glow on the wooden tables, some occupied by customers chatting quietly. Taylor chose a table near the window, where they could see the drops running down the glass, reflecting off the lights of the city. Sophia sat next to her mother, still holding her small battered backpack against her chest. "You can ask for whatever you want," Taylor said with a quiet smile. Emily hesitated, but as she looked at Sophia, she sighed and picked up the menu. "A hot chocolate and a sandwich is great, thank you." Taylor realized that the woman was choosing what seemed cheaper and decided not to insist. "And for you, Sophia?" The girl looked at her mother, as if seeking permission to speak. Emily nodded with a faint smile. "Pancakes," he said quietly. Taylor smiled. "Pancakes are always a good choice." While they waited for the order, Sophia opened her backpack and pulled out a small sketchbook, the pages of which were a little crumpled. With a worn, blue-colored pencil, he began to scribble something, the tip of his tongue sticking out in a concentrated gesture. "What are you drawing?" Taylor asked curiously. Sophia hesitated for a moment, but then turned the notebook to show the drawing. It was a simple illustration, but full of details. A cozy little restaurant with round tables, hanging lights, and a large chalkboard with a handwritten menu. Behind the counter, a smiling woman served a steaming plate. Taylor blinked, surprised. "Wow, you draw really well. Is this restaurant real or just imagination?" Sophia looked at her mother before answering. "It was my grandma's. She made the best apple pies." Emily looked away from the cup of coffee in front of her, stirring the liquid with her spoon absent-mindedly. "My mother had a small restaurant," he said, his voice barely audible. "It was our home, more than our home. But after she's gone," Emily shrugged. "I couldn't keep it." There was a weight in his words, a mixture of nostalgia and disappointment. Taylor felt a lump in her throat. How many stories like that existed, spread around the world? Dreams that were extinguished before they even had a chance to shine. She looked again at Sophia's drawing. The girl scribbled small details: a vase of flowers on a table, a cup of coffee smoking, a slice of pie next to it. "And would you like to have a restaurant like this one day?" Taylor asked, directing the question to both Sophia and Emily. Emily let out a short, humorless laugh. "I can barely afford a motel room for the two of us. How could I think of a restaurant?" Taylor did not immediately respond. Instead, he observed the expression on Emily's face, the weariness, the resignation. But there was also something there, something that perhaps she herself could not see, a forgotten potential. The waiter brought the dishes, and Sophia ate the pancakes with an enthusiasm that made Taylor smile. But even as they talked about light matters, the idea had already been planted in Taylor's mind, and like any good melody, she couldn't just ignore it. Sophia's pancakes were already just a dirty dish, and Emily's coffee cooled slowly. The rain outside had subsided, but the silence that had settled between the three seemed a reflection of the thoughts that weighed in the air. Taylor rested her elbows on the table and looked at Emily gently. "Do you miss cooking?" Emily looked up, surprised by the question. "What? Cooking? Working in the kitchen in your mother's restaurant. Did you like it?" Emily was silent for a moment, as if searching within herself for the answer. I did. Yes," he finally admitted. "But that was a long time ago. I'm not that person anymore." "Who are you now?" Taylor asked, her voice soft but firm. Emily blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" Taylor smiled slightly. "You said you're not that person anymore. So who are you now?" The young mother looked away. "I'm someone who needs to survive, first of all." Sophia, oblivious to the weight of the conversation, scribbled another drawing in her notebook, now sketching something that looked like a slice of pie. Taylor was silent for a moment, then said, "What if there was a way to change that?" Emily Franziu ahead. "What do you mean?" "What if—" Taylor took a deep breath. "What if there was a way for you to start over? If you had a chance to cook again, to turn what was once a dream into something real? Would you try?" Emily let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "This is not so simple." "I know," Taylor agreed, "but it's not impossible either." Emily watched her for a moment, as if trying to understand why this stranger, this famous millionaire, seemingly no matter how to care, was asking questions that no one else asked. Why would anyone care? And deep down, why did that make something stir inside her? Sophia looked up from the drawing and smiled at Taylor. "Mom makes the best apple pie in the world." Emily sighed and ruffled her daughter's hair slightly. "And you always say that because you've never tasted others." Taylor laughed softly. "Now I'm curious." Emily still looked hesitant, but there was something different in her eyes. Perhaps it was just a flash of nostalgia, a reminder of what once was. Or maybe it was something else, a small seed planted in the rain waiting to grow. The next morning, Emily woke up to the gentle sound of the light rain crashing against the window of the small motel room. Sophia was still asleep, her small sketchbook lying next to the bed. Emily ran her hand through her hair and sighed. The conversation from the night before still echoed in his mind. What if there was a way to change that? Taylor's words sounded like a melody that repeated itself, soft but insistent. She had never allowed hopes to grow within her. They were dangerous, too fragile to survive reality. But then, someone like Taylor Swift had looked at her and seen something beyond her tired appearance, and that bothered her as much as it intrigued her. Before he could get lost in thought, someone knocked on the door. Emily hesitated before opening. Taylor was there, holding a large bag in her hands and smiling as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Good morning?" Emily blinked, surprised. "What are you doing here?" "I brought some things." She walked in before Emily could refuse, placing the bag on the small table in her room. Inside were groceries, fruit, bread, milk, cookies, far more than Emily could have bought on her own. And, on top, a new case of colored pencils. Sophia, who was beginning to awaken, widened her eyes when she saw the colored pencils. "Are they for me?" Taylor smiled. "Of course. You need new colors to draw your dreams, right?" The girl smiled and picked up the pencils, immediately turning to her notebook. Emily watched it all in silence, feeling a lump in her throat. "Taylor," he began hesitantly. "I know," Taylor interrupted softly. "You're not used to accepting help." Emily looked away. "I don't want charity." "That's not charity," Taylor replied. "It's just a little push." She then took a small booklet from her purse and handed it to Emily. "What's that?" "A cooking course for single mothers," Taylor said matter-of-factly. "I know some people who organize this." It is a program that teaches you how to manage a small business in the food area. Emily stared at the paper as if it was something unreal. I don't know. Think about it, Taylor said without pressing. Sometimes all we need is a starting point. Emily still looked resistant, but Taylor noticed a different glint in her eyes, and that was enough for now. The next few months passed like a new melody being composed. Every note, a small progress, each stanza, a new challenge overcome. Emily, hesitant at first, ended up accepting the invitation to the course. At first, I didn't know if I should go. The fear of failure was almost as great as the desire to try. But with each class, I rediscovered the pleasure of cooking, of testing recipes, of seeing people's smiles when they tasted their dishes. Sophia, always with her sketchbook, accompanied her at every step, scribbling ideas for what she called Mom's Restaurant. And Taylor? She followed everything from a distance without attracting attention, but always present at the right moments. When Emily completed the course, a new challenge arose. Now what? What to do with this knowledge? It was then that one day, Taylor appeared again, this time with an unexpected gift. "What's that?" Emily asked when she saw the folder Taylor was putting on the table. Taylor smiled. "An opportunity." Inside the folder there was documentation of a small space that was for rent, not very big, but perfect for starting something new. "I can't accept that," Emily said immediately, closing the briefcase. "You're not accepting anything. She's investing in herself," Taylor corrected, keeping calm. "I'm just opening the door. You decide whether to cross it." Emily looked at Sophia, who was watching everything with bright eyes. "Mom, can you make pies here?" Emily felt a tightness in her chest. Could he? The answer came from within, stronger than the doubts. Yes, she could, and he would.